My style is I always, in all of my services, like to introduce a lot of my prayers and share with you the meaning and intention of those prayers in order to help them become more meaningful and relevant. And it occurs to me as we just completed the core portion of our worship service that I haven't actually taken an opportunity during our High Holy Day services to really connect the dots and explain these prayers. So if you've heard this explanation before, I apologize, but I feel that it's important enough to share today, especially because I recognize we do have so many new families in our congregation today. So we just recited what felt like 3 different prayers. But really, this is one prayer broken into 3 distinct pieces, and each one has its own unique intention. So earlier, we began with the Barhu. We stood, we rose, and the Barhu is our call to worship. It gives us an opportunity to prepare our minds and our bodies to connect with God. It's like doing a check-in before you actually start praying to make sure both parties are on the same page. And then when we sang the Shema together, this is our oldest and most important prayer of the Jewish people, as it states our fundamental belief as Jews that we believe in only one God. The word Shema, though, means listen. And listen is so relevant in this prayer because there's a lot of listening that has to go on in order for this prayer to really settle into its meaning. So clearly, it's our responsibility as a community of Israel, Shema Yisrael, listen Israel, to hear that call to worship. And if we are going to pray, we clearly want to know that God is listening to us. But the listening that I feel is most important at this moment is the reminder that we must also listen for God. And to understand that God does not speak to us in the loud, booming voice that we might imagine from movies and cartoons. I like to relate it to my Hebrew school kids when I say to them, okay, remember that scene on Mount Sinai when God speaks to Moses and you hear Charlton Heston hearing Moses in this loud, booming voice. That's not really how God speaks to us. God speaks to us in the still, small, quiet moments of our lives. And even though it might be a strong voice, it isn't an outer voice. It's the inner voice. And we must pay attention to that inner voice in order to have a two-way line of communication. What good does it do us to offer our prayers up to God if we are not waiting and listening and being aware of a response that is coming back to us? And then finally, the kids came up here to read the Via Hafta. And this, especially when I'm working with kids, is the most important message that I can share with them because this is a message of their personal accountability. And to remember that they are responsible for their actions. That God has given us a set of rules, and it's our responsibility to follow those rules. And if we do, then we become more closely connected to God. If we don't follow the rules, we become separated very far away from God. So the reminder is that by being a rule follower, then we become better people. Now, we also reference those 613 mitzvot, and I'll just share that 613 mitzvot are present on a talit when we wear one. That there are a series of knots and fringes on every talit, and in biblical days, every knot and every string was given a numerical value, and if you add those numbers together, the sum represents a very significant number in Judaism. That is the number 613. So when we wear our talit, we are we are enveloped by God's commandments, and we are reminded that it is by performing these commandments that we become better people. Good message for us to give our children, because as many of you parents know, your children reaching that age of 13 years old are going out more frequently into the world and making their own decisions. We don't get to control them as much as we would like to. And they need a foundation. They need to have good rule-following foundation inside of them. So I really like to teach the Via Hafta, especially with my kids. That's my little lesson today. And Jaden really wants to read the Via Hafta too. Our next prayer, the Amidah, is our next responsive reading. And this is also one of my favorite prayers, not only for children, but for all of us. It's a very important message that we all follow. And the Amidah reminds us that we are God's partners in creation. Also, like the Via Hafta, it reminds us of our personal responsibility in this world. That everything we have and everything we do and everything that occurs is really a result of our own actions. And it is a reminder that God has given us the most incredible gifts, the most amazing gifts, and the most important gifts that we could ever hope for, and that we need to take responsibility to use those gifts to create the best world we possibly can for ourselves. So we read responsively the Amidah. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end war, for we know that you have made the world in a way that humans must find their own path to peace within themselves and with their neighbor.
We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end starvation, for you have already given us the resources with which to feed the entire world, if we could only use them wisely.
We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to root out prejudice, for you have already given us eyes with which to see the good in all people, if we would only use them rightly.
We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end despair, for you have already given us the power to clear away slums and to give hope, if we would only use our power justly.
We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end disease, for you have already given us great minds with which to search out cures and healings, if we would only use them constructively.
Therefore, we pray to you instead, O God, for strength, determination, and willpower to do instead of just to pray, to become instead of merely to wish.
For your sake and ours, speedily and soon, that our land may be safe and that our lives may be blessed.
May the words that we pray and the deeds that we do be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer.